All right, we'll be in Ezekiel chapter 46. We've got 3 more chapters, counting this one, and we will have finished Ezekiel. I know we've been in it well over a year, but I think it's been worth the study. And I'm not sure where I'm going after this, because usually I take a vote among the men and get feedback. But this time I've asked the women, the females of the congregation, to choose a book of scripture they would like for me to teach on, and that's where I'll be picking up. So as soon as we know what that is, we'll announce it so you can start studying ahead. Thus said Yehovah Elohim, the gate of the inner court which faces east shall be closed on the 6 working days. It shall be opened on the Shabbat day, and it shall be opened on the day of the new moon. Okay, a few things to think about here. If this is the temple to stand in eternity, okay, if that is correct, then the people who make the argument in eternity there won't be a Shabbat just got that blown out of the water. Okay? And people say, well, why would we work in eternity? Well, we were put here to work in the first place. In the first place, there was one garden with 2 tenders. Okay? The earth, when it is remade, is still going to need to be cultivated. There just won't be the curse of sin to cause things to die on us all the time. Okay? We're still going to have that perfect situation that he intended for our first ancestors to have. It's just that we're going to be doing it, and it's going to be all over the earth. Second thing to think about. I've been seeing a lot lately on Messianic forums, Hebrew Roots forums, people arguing. Should we recognize the lunar calendar? Is the lunar calendar really important? Can't we just look for the first day of the biblical year and then not worry about the rest of the lunar calendar and just count the days for the feasts? And when we know the 7th new moon happens, then we count that too. Can't we just do that? Do we really need to track where we are? It says right here that the gates are going to be open on the Shabbat and on the new moon, the eastern gate, the gate that only the prince can pass through. That tells me, without a doubt, that the lunar calendar is important to our Creator. Now, when we're out there in the world, we have to go by this whole, January through December, 24 hours, midnight to midnight calendar, because that's how the world functions. But we're supposed to be in the world and not of the world. And I think, if anything, I think even those of us who try to track the lunar calendar and understand it aren't working it hard enough, myself included. Okay? I think about Brother Drummond and his sighted moon ministry. Okay? People say he makes too much out of that. I don't know that you can make too much out of the times and seasons of Yehovah. The prince shall enter by way of the vestibule outside the gate, and shall attend at the gatepost while the priest sacrifice his burnt offering and his offering of well-being. He shall then bow low at the threshold of the gate and depart. Now, in the eternal kingdom, will there be death? No. It's talking about sacrifices. That's another one of those reasons I told you last week or the week before. I talked about, I believe that there will be a 3rd temple, and it will remain standing even when the earth is made new. I believe that right now we're looking at the temple standing in this epoch, but I believe it's still going to be standing for the earthly worship when the eternal kingdom comes. So I believe there's going to be a period of time where the priests will function again in the Levitical manner. And that once the earth is made new and there is no sin, there will no longer be a need for sacrifice. It will be only a ministry of mercy. While the priest sacrifices his burnt offering and his offerings of well-being, he shall then bow low at the threshold of the gate and depart. The gate, however, shall not be closed until evening. The common people shall worship before Yehovah on Shabbatot, Sabbaths, and new moons at the entrance of the same gate. You hear that? The priest can, or the prince can enter in and give the sacrifice to the priest. The priest can take it back and worship, but the common folks, like all of us, will only be able to come up to the gate and worship. The burnt offering which the prince presents to Yehovah on the Shabbat day shall consist of 6 lambs without blemish and 1 ram without blemish, with a meal offering of an ephah for the ram, a meal offering of as much as he wishes for the lambs, and a hin of oil with every ephah. And on the day of the new moon it shall consist of a bull of the herd without blemish and 6 lambs and a ram. They shall be without blemish. On the Shabbat and on the new moon. You're starting to see why I think that lunar calendar is more important than people want us to think? Think about it. There's about 4 to 5 Shabbats in a month and 1 new moon. So that's either 1/5 or 1/6 of the worship commanded in the month would not be done if we're not citing the new moon. And he shall provide a meal offering of an ephah for the bull and an ephah for the ram, and as much as he can afford for the lambs, with a hin of oil to every ephah. This is the prince. As much as the prince can afford to give, that's what he gives. How backwards is that from today? How backwards is that from what we see in the world today? Because the enemy, Hasatan, has the world turned upside down. To the point, it's as upside down now as it was when the first followers of Mashiach went out into the world and they preached the truth. And people said, look at these people who have turned the world upside down. They weren't turning it upside down, they were turning it upside right. It worked for a few centuries. And then a Roman emperor came along named Constantine and corrupted everything. And now it's flipped back over the way Hasatan wants it. When the prince enters, he shall come in by way of the vestibule of the gate, and he shall go out the same way. But on the fixed occasions, when the common people come before Yehovah, whoever enters by the north gate shall bow low, or to bow low shall leave by the south gate, and whoever enters by the south gate shall leave by the north gate. They shall not go back through the gate by which they came in, but shall go out by the opposite one. I didn't understand this for a long time, and then an elder told me, this is a picture of once you're on the path of worship, you stay on that path, you don't turn around and go back. Once you've come into the presence of Yehovah, there should be no going back, because the only thing you can go back to is the world. I've also read that it has to do with, it's a picture of Abba Abraham and the torch passing through the 2 sides of the sacrifice. I've not found anything really to back that up other than one commentary that I read. And as for the prince, he shall enter with them when they enter and leave when they leave. Wait a minute. Are you saying that the prince Is the Torah, or not the Torah, is the Tanakh saying that the Prince of Peace, or that, because that's how a lot of people interpret that, or David Hamelech, another interpretation? Or is the Tanakh saying that those in the ultimate authority are no better than the common people in front of Elohim? That's sure how I read it. And there's a lot of people in this world who need to get a grip on that. On festivals and fixed occasions, the meal offering shall be an ephah for each bull, an ephah for each ram, and as much as he wishes for the lambs, with the hin of oil for every ephah. The gate that faces east shall also be open for the prince whenever he offers a freewill offering, be it burnt offering or offering of well-being, freely offered to Yehovah, so that he may offer his burnt offering or his offering of well-being, just as he does on the Shabbat day. Then he shall leave, and the gate shall be closed after he leaves. Each day you shall offer a lamb of the first year without blemish as a daily burnt offering to Yehovah. You shall offer one every morning, and every morning regularly you shall offer a meal offering with it, a sixth of an ephah with a third of a hin of oil to moisten the choice flour as a meal offering to Yehovah, a law for all time. So think about that. Remember the dispute? Is this the third temple or is it the fourth temple? And I said, if you really read it, I think the third temple is the fourth temple. Remember that? We've seen sacrifices being made in this temple, and we see that this temple is the temple for all time. We haven't left the temple. Starting to see where I get that. The lamb, the meal offering, and oil shall be presented every morning as a regular burnt offering. Thus said Yehovah Elohim, if the prince makes a gift to any of his sons, oh boy, it shall become the latter's inheritance. Okay, that much makes sense, right? The prince owns certain things. He's allowed to give it something to his son. If I'm a prince, I can give it to my son. He inherits it, right? It shall pass on to his sons. It is their holding by inheritance. That makes sense, right? My great-grandfather inherited a farm. My grandfather inherited it from him. His kids each got a piece of it. Okay, that's how it works, right? Okay, that makes sense. But if he makes a gift from his inheritance to any of his subjects, it shall only belong to the latter until the year of release. Okay, talking about that 7th year. Actually, one commentary I read said it's talking about the year of Jubilee. I'm kind of on the fence about that. I need to do more research. Most commentaries I've read say it's the 7th year Sabbath that it's talking about. Or at least most that I've read. Then it shall revert to the prince. His inheritance must by all means pass on to his sons. Okay? So those sections of land to the sides of the temple mount, those sections of the lands that go from one end of Israel to the other, belong to the royal line, the Davidic line, of which some are sitting here. That's their inheritance. And those of us who are not of the Davidic line or can't prove that we are should never try to claim that. It belongs to them. But, and here's the one that's going to make a lot of politicians' heads roll if they, or roll over in their graves if they ever heard this. But the prince shall not take property from any of the people and rob them of their holdings. You know, people try to tell us that the United States government is set up on Judeo-Christian, what they call Judeo-Christian principles, and that the principles of the founding fathers came from Torah, Tanakh, or Hadesh. Okay? I agree with a lot of that. I think a lot of them drew from that. I'm not saying all of them were believers, but I think they took that as a source, and I think that's part of the prophecy of Yaakov in chapter 48, 49, somewhere up there in this book. Okay? I believe that was a founding principle, was that things came from this book, but since then they've instituted a thing called eminent domain. Okay? Where they can come through and they can say, for the benefit of everybody in the community, Philip, we're taking your wells. For the benefit of everybody in the community, Philip, we're taking your house. We're going to level it. It's going to be a park. Or we're going to put a road through here. They can do that because they've written it into the laws. That is entirely backwards from what Scripture says. Even the prince who speaks on behalf of the people to Mashiach, even he never got the authority to take the property away from the people. Our national leaders want to know why the country isn't blessed the way it used to be. I'd say here's one of the reasons. Give the holdings back to the people you took them from and start to see the country be blessed. Only out of his own holdings shall he endow his sons, in order that my people may not be dispossessed of their holdings. He's not the Elohim of the kings, he's the Elohim of the people. The king just happens to be one of those. Then he led me into the passage at the side of the gate to the sacred chambers of the priests, which face north, and there at the rear of it, in the west, I saw a space. He said to me, this is the place where the priests shall boil the guilt offerings and the sin offerings, and where they shall bake the meal offerings, so as not to take them into the outer court and make the people consecrated. Wait a minute. So the people, mainly the prince, brings in these offerings, and they're offerings that are handed over to the priest. But once the priests use them for an offering, they can't go back among the people. Why? Because the people are not sanctified, are not consecrated. The people are sanctified in that they are setting themselves apart for worship, or we are setting ourselves apart for worship. We are not consecrated. Okay? We are not priests of that order. Okay? And people say, well, the Levitical priesthood is gone. It's the order of Melchizedek. The order of Melchizedek predates the order of Levi. But who are we looking at here? We're looking at the order of Levi. This is not about the order of Melchizedek. The order of Melchizedek doesn't need a blood offering, a blood sacrifice. Why? Because we have Mashiach as the blood sacrifice. This is the order of Levi. Anyone who tells you different either is lying to you or doesn't understand Scripture. Then he led me into the outer court and led me past the four corners of the court, and in each corner of the court there was an enclosure. These unroofed enclosures, each 40 cubits, I think it's 100 feet. Is that right, brother? Yes. Yeah. 100 feet, okay, long, and 30 feet wide, 75 feet wide, were, 30 cubits wide is 75 feet wide, were in the four corners of the court. The four corner enclosures had the same measurements. On the inside, running round the four of them, and the on the inside is not in the text. That's something that's interpreted in. Okay, so running around the four of them there was a row of masonry equipped with hearths under the rows all around. He said to me, "These are the kitchens where the temple servitors shall boil the sacrifices of the people." The sacrifices of the people had to be prepared to even be taken into the place of consecration. They had to go through the boiling pot. Literally, it's a picture of the refiner's fire that we as individuals, it says, we go through to be made pure. And when it was properly prepared, then it can go into the place of consecration. If it comes back out, it consecrates the people who brought it when they're not prepared. Do we have a midrash? There's really only two orders. There's within Levi, there are, help me, brother, like 24 orders, is that correct? There's 24 sub-orders within Levi. We don't know how Melchizedek is organized. We've not been shown that. I'm guessing it's similar because it's supposed to be, Levi is supposed to be an earthly picture of Melchizedek, but where are you living? Are you living on earth? Okay, when are you living? Are you living prior to the eternal kingdom? Which is the priesthood that is ordained for earth prior to the eternal kingdom? That would be the order of Levi. Okay, now, but the order of Levi is a picture of the order of Melchizedek, just like the holy days, the feast days are a picture of the times and seasons of eternity. Okay, so everything that you do under the order of Levi is preparing you for your priesthood under the order of Melchizedek. Well, it says that he had no parentage, no origin. No one knew where he came from. He was just there one day. Some people interpret that to mean that he was an angel working on behalf of Yehovah. Some people interpret it that he was Mashiach in a pre-incarnate form. I've gone back and forth on that about who he was and that over the years. You could ask Melech and he might give you one answer, and you ask Dark and he might give you the other answer. But pretty much one of those two things, it's agreed is what was going on there. Yes.
About that, do you think it's also possible that it could be kind of like an Enoch thing or Elijah thing where they were taken into heaven and he was
when they were dealing with Melchizedek? Yeah. No, I don't think so, because it wasn't Abraham who saw him. It was everyone who was with Abraham who saw him. I mean, I guess that's possible. Elohim could have opened the eyes of all those people, but I think the Hebrew nation would have flourished a lot sooner. You know, because I mean, as soon as we were at the base of Sinai, mixed multitude and all, when he revealed himself to the people, we just exploded. You know what I'm saying? So I think this was an Abraham and his people seeing what this priest, this Melchizedek, who was something above an earthly priest.
well, let's see that's not the way that's not thoughts on that. I think I tend to believe more that it was I don't know that, but
what do you believe? Do you believe it was Mashiach or angel, or do you have something else? You believe it's Mashiach? Okay. I just wanted to tell you, this is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. It is. I mean, don't you feel inspired? I want to help build it. Mashiach come. Yes.
What order of Levi?
Oh, the sub-orders each served 2 weeks out of the year and the feast. So 2 weeks out of the year, like Luke says that Zechariah was of the order of Abiah. And so we look at that and we know exactly the 2 week period that he was doing his service in the temple. And then he would go home, and the next suborder of priests would show up and do 2 weeks of service. And then of course throughout the rest of the year they had other service that they did for the people, but they had to be in Jerusalem for their 2 weeks and the holy days.
So that's 48 weeks.
And then the holy weeks and the holy days, yeah. And there was an allowance made for if there was a second Adar, the 13th month. Okay, there was allowance made in how they did that, and I can't remember how they did it, but they had a process set up. They may have drawn lots or something. I don't remember. Somebody told me one time, but I don't remember how it was decided. Yes. No. Okay, you're nodding and smiling. I thought you had something to say.
Did you say there were 24 suborders of?
I believe that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. 24.
See, what I was thinking is that there was 4 as well. That suborder was destroyed, right?
Or it was.
Is that a suborder?
Yeah, but that was prior to the division of the order, right?
Well, the thing I was thinking is if Melchizedek, if the order of Levi is a reflection of the order of Melchizedek, there might be at least one more because that suborder was destroyed.
But that wasn't a suborder. That was a man's lineage. That was him and his descendants, and I don't think it wasn't until David Hamelech that they divided the order up, because there had come to be so many priests and there were so many people in the land who needed to be served that they couldn't all come to Jerusalem, and so he put that together the way that structure. So, and I believe that, if I remember right, I believe what you're talking about happened long before that. Okay. Yeah. So that wouldn't even apply there, and that was a man and his descendants. That wasn't a suborder of Levi.
The other thing I was going to say that it is really sad that vacant domain is just people, and I think that actually started personally. I think it started with the Native Americans way back in the day. I'm not going to say that I don't think it happened to all of them, but that's basically what happened there. And now the land that they have left is just the land that nobody else really wants. And even that they have to fight for, and it's just, like you said, you want to believe in one way the country's not being blessed.
Right.
There's that, and there's people that haven't had a family with land for generations, and they say, well, we want to build a new highway, so we're just going to take your land.
When I was in high
We're
school,
going to give you money for it, we're going to take your land, and we're going to put this road right through the middle of your house.
when I was in high school, there was a girl. She was growing up on what had been her great grandfather's farm. And one day, some people showed up at her door and told her mom and dad, "This is what we're giving you for your land." Why? So they could widen the highway. They didn't need the whole farm. They could have taken 20, 30 feet. It still would have been robbery, but they forced them to sell the entire farm, pennies on the dollar. Yes.
They forced those people.
Yep.
And I mean, there were people that I knew that wanted to keep their farms and finish their families for years. And they just took it away from them.
I know a man in this town. He went to the service thinking that when he did his time in the service, he would come home and take over the family farm. And when he came home, there was no family farm. There was a lake there instead.
That's their inheritance.
Is there any other midrash?
Is there a place I can find the order?
I found a list one time on the internet. Let me look and see if I saved that.
I think it's this scripture somewhere here.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a chart that I had set at one point. All right, who's counting Omer? Today's the 14th day of Omer. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
We should be probably, but I'm not.
We should be. We should be, because that's also a picture of our growth as believers. Yes. Omer is a special process of offerings and being given and counted for the first 50 days following, starts on the first day of the first week following Pesach, and then you count 50 days, and the 50th day is Shavuot, and it's how we start mapping out the holy days for the year. So we are 14 days past Rosh Hashanah, which is the day that we start the count, and we are, see what's 14 minus 40, so we're 26 days away from Shavuot. Oh, yeah, you're right, 50. So 36 days away from, you're right, 50 days, I'm sorry, 36 days away from Shavuot. Yes.
You know, in our life, we observe the new moons, which I always wondered why. I think that they're following the Bible and everything. They kind of discussed that whenever we got into it. And then they didn't do the homework, they didn't do any of those things.
Well, something I was told by an old man who was, I don't know where he ministered, they may have moved around, I don't know how that denomination worked on that, but he was a minister in Worldwide Church of God for many, many years. And now he's part of the Reformed Church of God, I think it is. Or he may be dead now. He was an old man like 10 years ago. And he told me, and this really blew my mind, that they didn't even actually set the keeping of the holy days by the moon. And I was like, but you guys are so biblical about how you keep the holy days. And he's like, yeah, but we just, we would look at when it was on the calendar with from the Orthodox Jews, and we would just go with that.
Right.
But the Orthodox Jews sometimes are off by a month. And it's, I mean, I get it. Everybody has to find what they think is right and follow it. But Mr. Armstrong was so careful about doing so many things right, and it just amazed me that wasn't done that way.
You know, I don't know what happened to him, but later on, he wasn't that way. And I don't know what happened to him. He changed.
Something that same gentleman, and I've heard other people who came out of that organization say the same thing, that he actually, looking back, they think maybe he was developing dementia, and he was losing his ability, his faculties, and started making a lot of bad decisions. But man, in the early days, he was on the run. Yes. Anybody else? Okay.